I am Lily Mae, and welcome to another episode of the Glambitious podcast. The theme for this month is the top voices of 2026. So I want to connect you to dynamic women who are in various industries, various facets of life, but they have a powerful voice, a powerful message that is going to help you in your journey. If this is your first time tuning in, please visit hervisibility.com to join the email list and stay connected to all of the opportunities to elevate your voice and visibility. For my guest today, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell everyone about who you are, the nature of your work, and we can go from there.
Hello, hello, hello. My name is Rosalind Luck. I am a transformational coach. I'm an author. I'm a speaker, and I love life. I help high potential women, high impact women, find their voice, reclaim their authority, and sit in that power seat that we all deserve to sit in.
And when you talk about helping someone find their voice, what inspired you to start that type of work?
I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I wanted to ensure that that didn't become my topic, that didn't become my title. So I was inspired to help other women, just especially women that have been through something a little bit traumatic, find where they not where they used to be, but where they should be.
Mm.
Because a lot of times we say we want to redefine ourselves. Well, that's what trauma does. Trauma does not sit you in a seat and say that's where you're supposed to be. Trauma redefines you because you should ask the question, not why did this happen to me, but what am I going to learn from it? So I wanted to be that sounding voice for women like myself or women that don't know they're like me.
Hmm.
Find that voice, find that power.
Right. And aside from domestic violence, what other types of trauma have you noticed kind of keep women stuck or keep women, in more of a darker or stagnant place?
Think that outside of that, it is a lot of women have abuse, verbal abuse from an authoritative figure in their families, childhood traumas, especially childhood traumas, because that's something that most women keep close to the cuff. They
Mm.
don't kind of air out what's happened to them many years ago. A lot of times because it was a family member. And so we want to keep what happens in the house in the house. I find that a lot of women that were in a relationship that was financial abuse, that the finances were held back, they're pretty quiet and they kind of just wait for someone to guide them along.
Mm. And I would imagine there are many women that don't even necessarily realize that they've lost their voice. To the people who are watching, what might be like a clue that could, really bring them an aha moment, like, wait a minute, I've lost my voice. Like, what is a clue to let you know that you need to kind of, focus or dig deep to heal some of those things?
A lot of it is overextending ourselves, people pleasing,
Mm.
wanting to make sure we show up above and beyond, right? So I know I can handle a 40-hour week, but why am I packing 80 hours of work in that 40 hours? So it's always trying to show up more, not be our best selves, so much to speak, but more than that,
Wow.
if that makes sense. So
No.
a lot of times when we find ourselves overextending, over people pleasing and things of that nature, there's something hidden that we're trying to adjust for, that we're trying to cover up.
Ooh, that's a great, great, great point. Now, tell, everyone like the power in finding your voice. Like, how can that free you?
Oh my, that's a great question. I found myself adapting in a lot of situations. I found myself, I had a boss that he reminded me so much of my abuser because he was just, everything has to be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's always his way or no way. Not a real good leader, if you will. But I found myself accommodating that behavior. I found myself adapting to that. Well, I know he's going to say this, so I'm going to say that. I know he's going to move this way. I know it's Monday, he's going to come in. So I think that we have to understand the difference between accommodating, adapting, and showing up for ourselves, right? So when we show up for ourselves, it's okay to say, well, I don't quite agree with that. What if we did this? Or what if we try this? To be free is to have a voice, and to have a voice is to walk in your purpose, right? So if I know I'm to show up today and speak with you, Lily, I'm not going to try to say what I think you want me to hear because that's not my story. You have to be able to tell your story in order for you to find that freeing power. A lot of times um, I was held back. I was a little shy about it because I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want people to think, oh, well, she allowed him to do this. It's a lot of shame. It's a lot of self-blame. When you find your voice, when you say, I didn't allow that, it happened to me, and here's what I learned from it, and here's how I can help you, it makes such a difference in your life when you can tell your story, understand your story, and realize that there's nothing that I did wrong or did to deserve it. The freedom that comes with finding your voice means that you have to go deep and be obedient to the fact that I have to walk in my purpose and not in the trauma that happened to me.
Indeed, indeed. And so I would imagine that there are a lot of women who are not quite sure of what type of help they need, right? So they're not sure if they need a therapist, they're not sure if they need to work with you, they're not sure if they need to take a more spiritual route in their healing. So what would you say to those women to, get them to do that initial call with you so that they could figure out if there are ways you could support them?
The first thing you have to do is you have to recognize that something happened, right? And a lot of us have buried that. For many years, I buried it. I buried it deep because it wasn't something that you just bring up at the tea table with the girls, right? So I buried it deep. So you have to realize you have to do a lot of self-assessing, and you have to realize that something happened to me. And once you realize that something happened to you, how are you maneuvering life? Do you just pack it away and leave it there? Or is it something that triggers you when certain things happen? Now, if there's a trigger and you're not sure where it's coming from, give me a call. I can help you through that. If you know exactly what it is and it's dug deep, that's a sign of therapy's necessary to dig that root up. Now, we can work together. I can do that along with showing you steps and strategies. And that's basically what I do. I teach you strategies on how to maneuver life through that. A therapist will dig deep. Now, the difference between myself and a therapist is that I'm personal. I get personal. We get in the weeds and I walk with you through every step. Where a therapist is going to have you there for that hour and then you'll see them the next time you have an appointment. I walk with you through the entire process for as long as you need me to walk. Um, the difference between me and a therapist also is I'm certified, but I'm not licensed. So when I see that there is more or things that I can't handle, I refer you to a therapist and I let you know where my line kind of in the sand's drawn. That doesn't mean that you and I don't have work because we can still work together, but there are certain things that I don't dig into because there are times when you just need therapy. Therapy is necessary, especially if you have deep-seated um, traumatic experiences that you've not dealt with.
Yes, I definitely understand. And thank you for like that thorough explanation because I do want viewers to have a clear understanding, of how you
Mhm.
support them. One thing you touched on as like an indicator that someone needs support is if they have triggers. And what I've realized is a
Mhm.
lot of people don't know what a trigger is and they don't even realize
Mhm.
they've been triggered because they have a reaction that they're so used to having this reaction, they don't realize I'm responding this way because I'm triggered. For example, I had a
Exactly.
friend that would get very upset with her boyfriend and just really like curse him out. And I had to say, hey, that's not normal. That's not a normal reaction to being upset because that shows, potentially like an emotional imbalance or a lack of managing, your emotional, the height of your emotions. That's you
Mhm.
were triggered. And she didn't even realize that her reaction to want to cuss this man out, that means she's being triggered. That's a trigger. So can you
Absolutely.
go a little bit into what triggers look like? Because I feel like people have these behaviors and don't realize that they're being triggered.
This is a perfect platform for that because we as women, especially when we're high impact women, we feel like we have to be hard. We feel like we have to, especially if we're bosses, right? I have to make sure that they understand. So I keep that wall build up, right? For me, that was my trigger. I built a wall so high that I wouldn't let people in because I didn't want them to see, right? But also a trigger is for me is when a male figure raised his voice. When a male figure raised his voice at me, that not only was it disrespectful, it triggered me because that's when I knew there was going to be trouble in the household. How did I handle that? I immediately barked back. I immediately stood and said, "This is who I am. You will not." But I did it in such a way that it wasn't healthy. And I realized that I was still bleeding and I was bleeding on people that didn't deserve it, right? Because when you have a trigger, you want to make sure you protect yourself. That's what a trigger does. So that could either mean you're going to lash out like your friend did, or you're going to cower back and you're going to start going deeper and deeper, and that turns into depression. So a trigger, for those of you who may not know, is just like you said, Lily, is when I might recognize that that's not quite normal, but you have to have a circle that's so strong that speaks up like you did, right? Um, but if you don't have that circle, it's all goes back to self-assessing. So when people see things like this and podcasts like this and talks like this, they should immediately self-assess and say, where does that show up in my life? Or does that show up in my life? And then seek that help. How do I manage it? I'm going to be the first to tell you that a trigger does not go away. It does not go away because that memory is going to forever be burned here because it was a traumatic memory. But we learn how to maneuver. We learn, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. And then we know how to work it. We know how to manage it. Now, if you are finding yourself in a position where you say, that might be me. I might be being triggered by this. Then you have to backtrack. Why am I being triggered by this? And then take ownership of that. That did happen to me. That did happen in my life. And this is what's happening as a cause of it. So those are very big. Triggers are very big. A lot of people say it's a cop out. It is not. It's a very real thing. And if you're unaware of them, they can be worse because they can cause you as well as your circle harm.
And one thing that came to mind while you were speaking, when I think about, or I feel like a lot of people, when they think trauma, they think that it has to be something very scary or something that harsh that happened to them. And sometimes that is not, a form of trauma to somebody else. Like for the friend, we discovered that the trauma was just her not being heard in her household growing up, her not having a voice.
Exactly.
So now
Mhm.
she's going to have a voice, you're going to hear it, and it's going to be extreme. And so that is a form of trauma. She knows she didn't have to go through any physical abuse or anything on the
Mhm.
extreme. But I do want to be clear that there are many forms of trauma, and sometimes it's not
Absolutely.
on the extreme end. It's something that you don't even identify as trauma. I think that word
Mhm.
carries so much weight because we think of the heavy things. We think of physical abuse, verbal
Absolutely.
abuse, but trauma shows up, in different ways. Would you agree?
Mhm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And that's a really big one. Not being heard as you grew up, or as you became into womanhood or manhood or whatever the case may be. When you aren't heard, you're gonna definitely lash out like that. You're gonna make sure. So quiet traumas are sometimes more powerful than physical traumas, right? Quiet trauma is just that I wasn't heard, I wasn't supported, I didn't feel loved. Those are traumas, especially if it was ongoing for a multitude of time. So yes, quiet traumas are sometimes more hurtful or harmful to self and to others than those physical traumas because you can see that I was battered. You can see, or if I tell you, you get a mental picture of that. But what does unloved look like? Especially if you're loved. What does unloved look like? I can't, recognize that. And so yes, if that is a case, you have to understand that yes, you have been traumatized as well, and that's a form of abuse.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you put a term to it, quiet trauma, because that's what it is.
Mhm.
Quiet trauma. And I don't feel like we talk about that trauma enough,
Mm,
because we talk about the heavier things, the harsher things, because they're heavy and harsh. They, of course,
yeah.
deserve that light. But I feel like there's so many women operating with quiet traumas that they don't even perceive are traumas, right? And then,
Mhm.
like for me, when I went to therapy, because I grew up in what people would call the hood, right? Like that's where I grew up in the hood. I didn't
Mhm.
know that that was a traumatic environment because that was very normalized to me. Everyone grew up that way around me for the most part. And I didn't know that hearing gunshots outside of your window as a child is traumatic. I thought that, like, I didn't know that
Normal.
until I got into therapy and he said, that's traumatic. And I was like, really? I mean, we would just, jump down from our beds and then go back to sleep once it's over. Very normal to me. That was a
Mhm.
quiet trauma that internalized for me to have a over need for safety. Like that's how it
Yeah.
showed up in my adult life. This super like superior need for safety. I wouldn't know that had I not went to therapy because I did not even think that growing up in the hood was a form of trauma and that the things that I
Right.
saw and experienced, were traumatic. So I'm so glad that
Yeah.
you put the words to it. Quiet traumas. What are some
Trauma.
self-assessments, maybe two or three, that viewers can do to see if they've had a quiet trauma, if they've had some triggers that they need to work out with you? Like, what are some
Mhm.
questions they need to ask themselves right now?
Now, I'm faith-based. So my first go-to is to meditate on it, right? To get that quiet time with yourself and to see how that works. A lot of people have a fear of being alone. So if you get that quiet time to yourself where you can just sit, no phone, no music, no anything, just quiet with yourself, you hear a lot from yourself. So that's one thing that I do, meditation. Um, I study a lot. I read a lot. You find out a lot about yourself in someone else's story. So I do a lot of that. And then a lot of self assessing is groups, right? Getting into a group where you wouldn't normally get into, but to hear other people's thoughts and to hear other people's processes, bring up things that you never would have thought of, like you and your therapist. He's telling you that growing up, that's a sign of you never would have thought of that on your own. You have to get other people's perspective in order to see yourself sometimes. So a lot of quiet time. And in today's time, that's a rarity, especially if you're a hustler, if you have multiple streams of income that you manage. Quiet time is something that we don't have a lot of. So to take advantage of that is a self-assessor. As a self-assessor, there are a multitude of self-assessment tools that are available online. I do offer some. My site is under construction right now, so I don't have everything out, but there are a multitude of things out there. If you feel like there is a underlying trigger, if you feel like there's a quiet trauma in your life, it behooves you to spend some time with yourself and figure that out because hurt people, not intentionally, but hurt people do hurt other people. And you don't want that to be your story. You don't want that to be how people see about you. So I think meditation, self assessment, quizzes that are online, and reading. And just educating yourself on, you may not find quiet trauma because I kind of just made that up, but um, you will know when that happens. Why do I feel the need to be surrounded by people all the time? Why do I feel the need? Why can't I sit alone by myself and not, feel aggravated, or that I have to have the TV on or the radio on, or I have to have my phone in my hand? Why can I sit with me?
Wow, I'm doing self-assessment in real time. I'm like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. No, this is such a great conversation, and I'm glad we were able to have it because I do feel like it's going to free some people. And if I could add to what you said as far as self-assessment for any of you who are really, taking the time to do what Rosin just suggested, also ask yourself where is there an area in life where you're missing peace or you're not feeling peace about? Because
Mm.
that could breadcrumb you to the trauma or breadcrumb
Oh,
you to the trigger. Like, where do I not
that's
feel
good.
peace? Is it in my alone time? Is it when I'm at work? Is it when there's authority over me? Is it when I'm with family? Do I feel unpeaceful in my friendships? Is it in relationship? Like, where is an area where I'm not feeling peace? And that's probably going to be a little breadcrumb that takes you to where the work needs to begin. And then, of course, you need to contact Rosalind to take it from there. And how can people, connect with you? Or I don't know if you, have any resources that they can get and tap into. How would they do that?
www.rosalindluck.com has all of my Calendly stuff on it. Again, some of it's under construction because I am rebranding, and it's just going to be amazing. I would love to have a conversation with you, if nothing more, just to answer a few questions for you to see what your next steps are. I'm always available to do that because I'm a helper. I believe in helping, and it's not always about getting to the bag for me. I enjoy seeing people free. I enjoy seeing people healthy. So if you're in need, feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation. Let's see where we need to steer you to next.
Absolutely. And also share your Instagram because I'm sure some ladies might just want to hop in your DMs. So share your Instagram.
At Rosalind Luck I'm sorry, at Rosalind Luck one, at Coach Roz Luck, and that's the only two I'm using right now. I have a couple. I'm trying to weed them out.
Fantastic, fantastic. And ladies, you can also meet Rosalind in person this summer at the Glambitious New Orleans brunch. I'm so excited to have her meeting us in New Orleans. So we're going to have a great time. If you're interested in meeting her in person, you can grab tickets at nolabrunch.eventbrite.com. Essence Festival weekend. It's going to be the weekend of July 4th in New Orleans. So again, you can visit nolabrunch.eventbrite.com and meet her in person. Thank you so much, Rosalind. This was a great, great conversation, and I can't wait to see the response from ladies who are going to tune in. So, ladies, if you're watching this replay and you're committed to growing and being better in 2026, I want you to put in the comments 2026 to just let us know that you are committed to being your best self this year. And you are going to do some of that self-assessment that she recommended so that we can really make the rest of this year the best of this year. So again, I am Lily Mae, the creator of the Glambitious brand. If you want to learn about my platform, simply visit hervisibility.com and you can follow me on Instagram at I am Lily Mae, all of which will be in the caption. Okay. Thank you again for tuning in to the Glambitious podcast.